It's Monday, and welcome into Sports Wrap here on the Fired Up Network. Gerald Bentley, joined by Alex Campbell. It was another eventful week in the NFL and in college football. We got a little bit of a little bit of reaction clips to go through from both the NFL and college football. But I wanted to start it off with, what was your big takeaway from the weekend? You know, I think the NFL is mine. Is the NFL is up for grabs, and college, there's a little separation for me now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's exactly like this is the middle of the season, the next 2-3 weeks as we kind of get in the college in the thick of conference play, and really kind of the same thing in the NFL in the thick of divisional play. We're going to see who's who. I mean, let's look at yesterday, the Lions Vikings. That is going to be a really really good series. When they go to Detroit later this year, that's a coin flip kind of game. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
super intense game.
it was yesterday. And you could say the same thing for, you see kind of, look at USC again. We talked about this before the season, once they got into the Big Ten schedule, I knew, and I think a lot of Big Ten people from the Midwest, I think kind of knew that like this brand of football, when you're traveling across two time zones, like you've got to out violent the other team. And that's hard to do when you're not a very violent team. Football is a violent sport, but you're not a very violent team anyways. And you're having to travel like that, and they're kids, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think that we're starting to kind of see the shine come off a few of those those former Pac-12 teams, because now the travel schedule, and really the cream is rising to the crop. Michigan can no longer just bully their way to a top 25 ranking. That was clear as they get beat down, by a really good Illinois team, but a team that honestly should not be getting them by 3 scores.
No, that was because of Michigan's lack of a quarterback. Referencing that changing of conferences and changing of style of play. And like I said, going to a more physical brand, another team that did that and went from sitting perennially on top of a conference in the Big 12 to the SEC. I think Oklahoma is finding out it's a little bit harder in the SEC, which everyone will say is a much more physical brand of football. Here's head coach Brett Venables after their game, and this does not sound like a guy who's really got much of an idea of what's changed.
I'd like to start off just by congratulating Coach Beamer and their staff for having their team ready to play. They played an excellent game. Really did a great job playing aggressively from the get-go and putting themselves in a position right from the beginning to win the game. What we put out there today as a football team is nothing remotely close to the standard here at the University of Oklahoma. Certainly not what we planned for today. And my job as a head coach is to evaluate everything and figure it out and find a way to put us in a better position to be successful. And incredibly proud of the fight in our players. And as we know, nothing influences and impacts a game like turnovers, and you lost the turnover margin, which we've the last 2 weeks we've lost it. And in the first 5 games of the season, we were one of the best in college football, and won as a result.
There you go. Now that's inspiring, isn't it? I don't know if it's the Darth Vader breathing or the thumb tapping that's worse, but man, it was just a beatdown, and it was a beatdown against a team that is below 3 teams they're going to be playing here in rapid succession. I don't think Oklahoma even makes a bowl game. And if you're looking for the things that we needed to do to make it successful, well, I think he's with the Oregon Ducks. Dylan Gabriel has 2,080 yards passing, 15 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. He was there, and he left.
Yeah. And the thing for Venables is tough. He's not wrong. You know what I mean? He's not wrong that it is the turnover battle. The problem is like, you can't coach offense, and you don't have what you needed was Chip Kelly. That's what you needed. You needed somebody like that You know what I mean? I mean, because honestly, you don't have an offensive coordinator there that is going to be able to take charge of that offense, and do what you can do on the defensive side. And let's be honest, that's what you were hired to do. And I think it, I've said this about Venables before on the show, is that it's hard for me to not look at a guy and say that you're clearly not performing when you can't get your side of the ball right. You know what I mean? Like that's the hard part for me. When they hire you as a defensive guy, the defense doesn't look right. You know what I mean? And that's the hard part for me. But he's right, though, that you're putting the defense in terrible spots by turning the ball over in critical moments and in terrible, like they have some of the worst turnovers. Do they have the worst turnover margin in the SEC? No, but they have, I would say, like in baseball, there's timely hitting. They have untimely turnovers, and they've had them a lot, and especially against the games where they've played competition that is at their level or close. South Carolina is a very good team, but they're not a team that should be beating Oklahoma 35-9. Just based on the two deep roster of both teams, they shouldn't. Like Lenora Sellers is still a freshman. All you have to do is basically load the box and send blitzes at him, and he's gonna force some turnovers doing that. And your defense couldn't do that, and it's because the offense basically couldn't stop turning the ball over themselves and had you running on defense and had you worn down. And so, what's really interesting, if we take like kind of a step back view at all this, really interesting to me is I don't remember a time when the coach carousel has ever been more clear mid-season than it is right now.
Oh, yeah, no, there's clear delineations because there's a lot more pressure, I think, on the coaches because it's not like in the past where, oh, hey, we lost a game, season's over. There's still attainability to success because of that 12-game playoff. So when Oklahoma lost to Tennessee 25-15, years past, oh, hey, that's it. Let's try again next year. Let's load it up. No, you still had everything in front of you because you had the SEC championship. And if you go through the SEC season and lose 2, you're probably making the playoff. Well, now they've gone consecutive weeks. The combined score the last 2 weeks for the Sooners, 69-12, 34-3 loss, and then a 35-9 loss. Now they get Ole Miss. They get a week off, but then they get Ole Miss. Oh, no, sorry. They get Ole Miss this Saturday. Then they get their chump game, the Maine Black Bears. Okay, they'll win that one.
Yeah.
Missouri playing a must-win game. Alabama playing a must-win game after their loss, and then LSU. So they've got one more win, and one more win doesn't get it done for you.
I don't think they make a bowl game. I don't think they make a bowl game. They're not going to win. They're simply not going to win any of those games. They're just not. They can't compete on that level. I said this when they lost to Tennessee, and I meant it, that they are lucky that Heupel was the head coach of Tennessee because they could have laid it on in the second half. That score was not indicative of how that game went. Tennessee could have hung 50 on that defense, and they decided not to. They took their foot off the gas, and it's because they did, and it's because you had Heupel as head coach who loves the university. He's not going to trash Oklahoma. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. It'd be like if Michigan, went against Oklahoma and they were up 34-6 in the second half. Sharon Moore is an Oklahoma offensive lineman. Like he's not going to, they're going to put, Cole Cabana in at running back and Jack Tuttle in at quarterback. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to run up the score. It's the same thing. But then, I knew this was going to happen with South Carolina because there's no love lost here. They're not rivals, but they're not Oklahoma alumni on that staff. And so, yeah, they boat race them. And by the way, like Ole Miss is a far better offense than South Carolina. I mean, they're going to absolutely boat race Oklahoma. Like, you know what I mean? Like Jackson Dart is going to tear them apart. And I didn't even try to rhyme, but it did.
Nah, it's not going to be a good week for Brett Venables. Somebody who is probably limping a little bit, but is having a good week. Saves the season. The season of dreams is still alive for the Missouri Tigers. Brady Cook taken to the hospital mid-game. Fear of broken ankle. MRI. MRI came back clear. They wrapped him up, brought him back on the ambulance, and he came in doing his best Willis Reed impersonation and led Missouri on a touchdown drive to end up winning a game that was way, way closer than it should have been against Auburn. It is the first time Missouri's beaten Auburn, but what a dramatic way to get the win. It's been a very uneven, kind of disappointing season for
Yeah.
Missouri, and maybe this gives them something to rally around. Here's what Brady Cook said post game about the whole consequences and the chain of events.
It was long. It was a long hour and a half for sure. I did not think I was going to come back to play in the game. My stuff was off. My pads were off. And yeah, we worked on it for about an hour and a half. We were over at the hospital, got an MRI, and ultimately, I realized, I had 2.5 games left to play in Faroe, in front of that crowd and in front of Mizzou, and we were going to find a way. I knew we were down. I knew we needed to come back and find a way to win this game. I think, we lose that game, the rest of our season looks a little different, and I recognized that, and I knew we needed to go win it. So.
And he led them on the touchdown drive. They end up winning 21-17 against a disappointing Auburn team, 2-5, 0-4 in conference. So way, way, way closer than it should have been. But do you think the team can motivate and rally around Brady Cook and head forward, because they got a tough schedule coming up?
I think they have an opportunity with the way they finished that game. I think they have an opportunity, especially because it was Cook that gave them that push, and he came back. That is such a, rally the troops kind of thing. It's very Byron Leftwich, like you said, very Willis Reed. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And how can you not buy in at that point? And especially when that throw that he made on third down on the final drive was sensational. That's the best throw he's made all year. He has a deep dig route, and they got it double covered. The corner was following the whole way. Safety comes over top. They had him right between two defenders, and he threads the needle. Jared Goff made a throw just like that on Sunday in the Lions' final drive. I mean, almost identical. And when you kind of look at and juxtapose those things, I do think that's something that can springboard this team to finish strong. And then you kind of peel the onion back and look at the schedule. Look, the next game is their toughest, undoubtedly, against Alabama.
And a must-win game for Alabama after they drop a game to Tennessee. Unusual positioning for Alabama to already have a few losses at this point in the season.
Absolutely. But Alabama, like you said, a 2-loss team from the SEC, especially with that Crimson Tide brand name next to them. Like, if multiple teams in the SEC finish with 2 losses, they're making the playoffs. I guarantee it. But here's the thing. If Missouri finishes with 2 losses, they're probably not making the playoffs. Probably not. They're going to need some help. You know what I mean? Alabama probably will just need to win out at this point and probably gets in that, committee qualifier spot. You know what I mean? They'll get in there. So yeah, that's a huge one. And I think that decides which one of those two go. But then after that, it really kind of opens up. I mean, then they get Oklahoma at Mizzou, and we've already talked about Oklahoma. I don't think the Sooners can win that game. They go to South Carolina. That Oklahoma. One could be tricky. South Carolina is getting better and better and better. Sellers is getting better. Raheem Sanders, that running back, is getting better and better. And by the way, they have the biggest cheat code at wide receiver. They have a 6'5" wide receiver that is the fastest wide receiver in the country. So that's insane. You think Ryan Williams is gifted? He is, but he ain't 6'5".
Can't teach big.
No.
Let's take a look at one other conference where the top teams are starting to filter out. Iowa State gets a very, very close win, but so does BYU. BYU quietly went into the week number 13. They come out 7-0. They take out Oklahoma State, not having a great year. They're 3-4, 0-4 in conference, but they play physical, hard-hitting team. 35-38. BYU gets the win. Here's BYU's head coach talking about how it's not easy winning in the Big 12.
Great game. Obviously, just really happy about the win, but I'm just really proud of the way the guys played. I'm just so, this wasn't easy, but just proud of our guys and just the fight and the belief that they have in each other, the leadership in our team. Just really proud of our our guys being able to make plays. And, it's just it was an exciting win, but the coach and me wants us to get better, obviously, but felt like we had some good moments. I want us to be more consistent, but you have to give Oklahoma State a lot of credit. I mean, they came in ready to play. They had a plan, and we were going to have to. I mean, we're going to have to battle that every week when you look at how many yards we gave up in the run game and some of the issues that we had were guys trying to do. I think guys were trying to do a little bit too much and weren't executing the scheme. But that's on us as coaches, and I got to do a better job of that too. And just the fundamental stuff, I thought didn't tackle as well as we should. Even though Ollie Gordon, he finds ways to break tackles, and he's a dynamic back. But yeah, with all those things being said, I was really proud that we were able to get more points than them.
Coach Kalani sounded like he was out there playing. He sounded exhausted after the game. But you got to be impressed with the job he's doing. You can tell they're playing a physical brand of football.
Oh, yeah.
He's a youngish head coach, still in his 40s, successful at his alma mater. And BYU is a school with a lot of championship history. It's really actually good to see him back sitting up at the top of a conference table.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go back to a couple of years ago when Zach Wilson was there, and I don't know if I was on the show at that time or not, but I tell you, I was completely up in arms that they weren't being considered for the playoff, because they'd won a title in 1984. It's more recently than a lot of the Power Four schools. Like if Indiana gets to the playoffs, they haven't won a title since, for 75 years, 80 years. You know what I mean? BYU is a far more. They put 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks in the NFL. In my lifetime, including my favorite player of all time, Steve Young. So BYU is not some, slept on little sisters of the poor school. And they've in kind of this big boy football that we've been in, I would say since the 14 playoff, they've kind of been relegated. They've kind of been pushed to the side. And that's something that you and I both talked about. Coming with this 12-team playoff is going to open the opportunity for more of these schools, especially when you combine it with NIL. The fact that these kids want to start and they want to be on TV and they want their likeness to be sold, basically. And the only way they do that is being a commercial interest, unless they're some, Arch Manning, 5+ star recruit that the school pays to come there. Your average 3-4 star recruit needs to get on the field first in order to make that, in a way to make real NIL money. They need to start.
Keep in mind too, BYU has an advantage. I'd say they only share with Notre Dame. They are the one, and there's other Catholic universities, but really Notre Dame's it. BYU is the Mormon university. So they have a whole religion behind them, just like Notre Dame has Catholicism behind them.
Well,
that
and
kind
I would
of
say
negates a little bit of NIL.
Well, BYU is even, and this, is even more entrenched in Mormonism than Notre Dame is in Catholicism.
Sure.
BYU, Brigham Young, literally is what they're named after. Who is one of the prominent figures in Mormonism. I mean, you know what I mean, and also that's
Steve Young had to go there.
Steve Young had it. Steve Young, it's interesting. If you read Steve Young's book, he did not even know he was related until his second year at school.
Yeah, which
didn't even know.
But
it's wild.
They're going to be hard to beat because they play a physical football, and unlike traditional, you think great BYU teams, you think the Steve Young teams, you think the Detmers, you think Robbie Bosco, they're not gunning the ball all over the place. They're running it. Kalani was a running back when he played at BYU. He's a fullback, blocking back, and he's an offensive line kind of guru, a defensive coach in his previous coaching venues before BYU. They're going to play hard football. I think you're going to get to a rock fight between Iowa State and BYU to see who wins that conference.
Yeah, I was really surprised that they won the game. After watching the first half, I was shocked, honestly. One thing that I could, and here's why. Before the game, I picked them to win. I will tell you, I picked Oklahoma State in the points though. But I picked them because Oklahoma State's backed into a corner. I automatically, if we talk about them for just a second, Gundy is also in that coach carousel. I'm telling you, he is.
Because they need to reset.
Oklahoma State had an opportunity here with the Doak Walker award-winning running back in the backfield to make the playoff, regardless of winning the conference or not. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but I think you had a chance at making the playoff, and that's what the fans thought before the season, and that's all gone up in smoke now, and they're not making it. And I think they're probably tired of those kind of seasons, those middling seasons by Gundy. I would imagine he's on the hot seat as well. And so they really, really needed this game. Like Oklahoma State and Gundy really, really needed this game. And I figured they'd come out swinging, and they did. Bowman only threw the ball 19 times for 85 yards passing. But the reason I thought that BYU was going to lose that game is because they were giving up just gashes in the run game. I mean, they were getting beat at the point of attack relentlessly in the first half. And here, this is what I mean. This is why Gundy is on the hot seat. If you look at the third quarter, BYU figured it out. They figured out how to slow down that run game enough. They end up, blanking Oklahoma State in the third quarter. BYU scores 14 and basically resets the game. And so that's really amazing on Stocky's part, because you outcoached Mike Gundy. I mean, you straight up went into halftime and outcoached Mike Gundy. Like, that's impressive. And you're right. It's what I said earlier. Violent football wins. It just does. This is a violent sport. That's why Harbaugh is successful on every single level. That's the secret to the sauce, is violence. You know what I mean? He plays a very tough physical brand of football. And his teams embody that tough physical brand of football. And Sataki's the same way. He was a power back, and it shows. They are a tough, 3.5 yards in a cloud of dust kind of team. And in a Big 12 that, let's be honest, those defenses are not meant to go against that team. And I think that's why they're finding so much success. You look at that, like that K-State game. That K-State defense has been built. That's a few weeks ago, that 10:30 game. That K-State defense has been built to go against guys that can throw the ball for 450, 500 yards in a game.
Sure,
they aren't built.
Yeah.
They aren't built. I mean, they're playing a 3-3-5. They're not built to go against ground and pound lineup under center kind of offense. They're just not. And that's why they got beat in that game. And that's why and I'd say the same thing for Iowa State. You know what I mean? Campbell is also kind of that way, where he wants to play ground and pound field position football. And so you're right. It is going to be a rock fight. I think those are your two Big 12 combatants for the title. And wouldn't BYU just be amazing in the playoff? I mean, it would just be amazing to see BYU in the playoff.
Yeah, just a great story.
Yeah.
Now let's take a look. Let's switch over to the National Football League. Fans in Cleveland coming under a little bit of criticism because they did cheer an injury. Kevin Stefanski.
I think let's get the test to confirm, but that's what it looks like.
Deshaun Watson, probably a torn Achilles. It was a very short speech there by Kevin Stefanski. Here's what he said about the fans booing or cheering, not booing, cheering Deshaun Watson's injury.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever okay to cheer when someone's injured. I'm sure it's not every person in that building doing that, but that's disappointing.
It is, though, a chance that maybe Stefanski saves his job, because I think Jimmy Haslam was forcing him to play Deshaun Watson, who was just bad. I mean, he was literally one of the worst statistical quarterbacks in the league the last 2 years. Not talking character, not talking money, just results on the field. Just horrendous. Mm-hmm. He's gone. Hopefully for Cleveland fans, gone forever. Just, you're going to be out for at least a year now. Take your money. Just go home. Go away. Just be done with it. Just cut them. Yeah. Move on. Hopefully the Browns are a team that is smart enough. I'm questioning this now, that they got an insurance policy on the contract so they get the money back. Yeah. But either way, move on. Done. You can't go. You can't do any worse.
Look, yeah, we've talked about this. Look at Denver. You can overcome this. Look at Denver. Mm-hmm. They're doing fine. You can definitely overcome this. Now's the time to. I will point out, though, in Deshaun's credit, this was the best game he played. This was the best game he'd played so far. It's funny because, like, it's so much irony. I mean, he was 15 of 17. He was putting off golf numbers in that game. Like, he was he was playing pretty nice there.
He was, yeah, 15 to 17, 128 yards. And they were hanging in there with the Bengals.
with the Bengals, right? And I actually think that if he finishes the game, I think they have a chance at winning that thing, based on how he was playing. It's the height of irony that this is the point that it happens. It looks like he has the best game in a Browns uniform he's had through 2.5 quarters, and poop, there goes the Achilles, and he's done. But yeah, no, you're right. Ultimately, no matter what, I don't care if he'd been playing back to Deshaun in Houston for the last 6 games. It's time to set this circus down. It just is. We thought there was an out before the season with the new allegation. Turns out they didn't chase that out. Maybe the contract wasn't set up for that like we thought it was. But you're right. I think you look at Kitchens. There was kind of a wry smile on his face, even though he was talking about, you know what I mean, the fans and how it's not right to cheer. There was kind of a wry smile on his face because I think you're right. Because I think he was being forced.
Yeah, he had to be asking to bench him.
He had to have been forced. There's no coach that was. You see Deshaun putting up the numbers he is, which is is criticized by the fan base and gets all the heckling that Deshaun does. It's going to keep trotting him out there. It's just not going to happen.
Go over to another team that was in the playoffs last year, like the Browns were. And that, little shaky start, but they've really got it put together now. The Buffalo Bills, they put away a pathetic Tennessee Titans team, 34-10. Think the Bills are getting their feet under them now. They're ready to make a little bit of a run.
Yeah, I mean, now that they do have a number one receiver, I think that really helps. I think Cooper is going to help more and more as time goes on. I mean, you look at Devontae Adams. I think it's almost an instant thing. You look at how many times Rodgers went to Adams last night. That's not going to be the same way with Amari Cooper. They don't have the same familiarity. Josh doesn't call the offense like Aaron is essentially the offensive coordinator in New York. So there's not that level of familiarity there. It's going to take some time, but once it does get acclimated, though, I mean, think about the opportunity now for Khalil Shakir. It just goes through the roof. A guy that was getting double teamed for the most part and still putting up decent numbers, really kind of exploding onto the scene in a way. Pretty much thanks to the Hall of Fame quarterback chucking him the ball, but he still got that Hall of Fame quarterback, and now defenses can't double him. So I think that it really expands. You look at the 2 tight ends they have. I think their passing game kind of goes through the roof now because Allen was making it work with, let's be honest, less than elite receivers and tight ends in the first place. Now he's got a true number one, and the defense is getting healthier. I think that's the one thing that's being overlooked here is he's being benefited by the defense is just getting healthier as time goes on, and we talked about this early on. It wasn't really Josh's fault. He was playing too much hero ball, and it's because there's had so many injuries on defense. It did kind of rear its head a little bit though. If you look, they're getting healthier, but in the first half they struggled with Mason Rudolph. They straight up struggled with Mason Rudolph, which is surprising.
They were down 10-7.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, Tennessee can still play defense. You know what I mean? They're not a bad defense. But on that note, I do think that maybe the Will Levis experiment has come to an end.
Oh, I think it's over. Yeah.
When Mason Rudolph comes in and outperforms you, that's a problem.
Yeah, just being an athlete isn't the whole key to being a quarterback.
Ask Anthony
Richardson.
Richardson.
Of young quarterbacks who are dialing it up and playing great. A couple of great games in the NFL yesterday. The Texans and the Packers, 24-22. The Packers win. Both teams sit at 5-2. Both teams will be fine. You're going to have a real battle for that division with the Packers and the Lions and the Vikings. That's a good division.
Yeah, it's the best division in football, in my opinion. It is.
Then,
and
game of the day, easily, the Lions, 31 on a end of the game winning field goal, beat the Vikings 31-29. If you saw the post-game reaction from Dan Campbell, you see why the players love the guy, because he was just going nuts, giving the game ball to the kicker, and the kicker turned around and said, Brett, is it Mabe?
Yeah.
And he turned around and said, I want to give this to the offense because they put me in position.
Yep.
UFL refugee, great story. He gets the win, and the Lions go to 5-1, playing a tough Vikings team that I don't think many people expected to be here behind a resurgent Sam Darnold.
Yeah, and Darnold was great in that game too. The Vikings were great. I mean, the Lions blew 2 11-point leads in that game and still came back to win. they are so remarkably resilient. And really, I mean, clearly it's about the offensive line. It is the best offensive line. I'm to the point now where it's the best since the mid-90s Cowboys. I really think it is. I think that the way they're playing right now is the best since the mid-90s Cowboys lines that were just full of all pros. And I'll say something else. Jared Goff is, in my book, the MVP right now.
Oh, yeah. He's having an amazing year.
I mean, he literally, through the last 3 games, he's over 90% passing.
Through 3 quarters, he was perfect in this game. He was 15 of 15, playing in an incredibly hostile U.S. Bank field for the Lions. The announcers kept talking about how loud it was, how the crowd noise was deafening. He was 15 of 15. I mean, played tremendous.
I mean,
and came back from a tough start. They were down.
Yeah.
I believe they were down at one point by 17 and came back. So
it
great
came back twice. I mean, came back twice. Jahmyr Gibbs was fantastic in that game, scored twice. I mean, obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown. But that's the thing that a player's coach like Dan Campbell can do is like you said, is you got the kicker who got the game ball, giving it back to the offense. And then, you know what I mean? And then Goff gets it and he gives it to the offensive line. You know what I mean? Because it is a team. They're in the foxhole together, man. Like it's a team. They've established that soldier-like camaraderie. And that's what Dan Campbell promised the Detroit fans that he would do. And man, he has done it. And he's done it. I think he's overshot most expectations drastically overshot most expectations. One of the most important things the Lions did was that they retained Ben Johnson. I think that can't be understated. Is if they can hold on to those 2 coordinators, the sky is the limit.
Good luck. He's going to have to get paid like a head coach because
they
are definitely putting it together. Yeah, and they may well. Yeah,
and
wouldn't be a crazy move.
No, and Campbell's the kind of guy. I don't think there's many head coaches that would deal with that, having the coordinator paid as much or more than them. I think he's one that would. I think he's one that wouldn't mind at all. He just wants to win.
It literally goes back to Bill Parcells having Bill Belichick as the defensive coordinator when Bill Belichick was turning down coaching jobs left and right.
Right.
So, absolutely. He's been an enormous impact. And Jared Goff, what a resurgence. He's just been tremendous.
I did it last night. After watching the game, I went on DraftKings and that was it. I put futures bet MVP Jared Goff. I can't remember a time in my life where I've seen a quarterback like have a 3-game stretch like that, throwing over 90% and not winning it. In fact, the only time I can remember a quarterback threw over 90% in a 3-game stretch in the middle of the season was Drew Brees. The only other time.
And it's a different style because Drew Brees was dinking and dunking. Goff is stretching the field out. He's throwing 10, 20-yard passes.
The Lions
including threading one through the needle on that game-winning drive. So they're not easy passes. He's not just dinking and dunking it.
No, in fact, the Lions, I think, have one of the top 3 highest yards per attempt in the league.
Yeah, it's a very explosive offense, way more than what you're seeing in the league going around, and especially here. The national game of the week, the Chiefs. Rematch of the Super Bowl against the 49ers. Brandon Ayuk out for the year now with the torn ACL. Deebo Samuel out with some sort of respiratory infection. He only was able to make 3 plays. So the Niners were without wide receivers. And the Chiefs lose Juju Smith-Schuster to a hamstring pull after 2 plays. And they went with the triple tight end and run the ball. Old school smash mouth football. Noah Gray, the backup tight end, the leading receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. And behind a Patrick Mahomes 33-yard career-long scramble with 2 pump fakes, they win and beat the Niners 28-18 in a game that could have been at home in the 70s. The Chiefs get the win. Mahomes, after the game, talked about the start.
I don't want to say it doesn't come easily because we're winning games against good teams by a good amount of points, and that's as easy as it. I mean, that's easy for the NFL, but I just don't think it's normal for what you've seen from us because there's not a lot of passing touchdowns. There's been a lot of turnovers, especially by me, and so I think it's just showing the versatility of our team. It's not just about me. It's not just about the stats and the light show and stuff like that. It's about playing team football, and I believe that if we continue to work, we'll get better offensively, throwing the ball down the field. But until then, it's nice to know that we have a great running game. We got a great defense, and we're able to execute whenever the time comes to win football games.
That's just what they're doing. They're winning the games, and they're winning it in a untraditional way. It shows a extreme amount of flexibility from the coaches because we talked about it here with Brett Venables at the start. Okay, he wants to win one way, and man, if we can stay on schedule, if the defense can lock down and we can play ball control offense, and I win 21-12, that's it. That's the model. Let's go. And if the circumstances change, okay, we're just going to do this harder. There is no other option. There's no
second
flexibility.
year.
There's no second plan. We're doing this. Well, the Chiefs behind Andy Reid, Matt Nagy are showing, okay, done our wide receivers. Let's go 4 tight ends. We got the 3 highest paid interior offensive linemen in the league. What the hell? We're just going to run it through the middle. And if Patrick Mahomes has to play dink and dunk football with 9 guys in the box and no wide receivers, and we throw an interception or 2, who cares? We got one of the best defenses in the league. We'll just play this way. Looks like a Mike Tomlin coach game.
Yeah, and one thing I would say is that like the best coaches are able to win both ways. You know what I mean? And the Chiefs have a Hall of Fame coaching staff between Reid and Spagnuolo and even Nagy. Like, it's an embarrassment of riches in the coaching staff. It is, and that's replaced what they used to have, an embarrassment of riches on offense, talent wise. You know what I mean? And it works. You look at this game, like they handed the ball off to 6, 7 different guys. I mean, you don't ever see that in the NFL.
Sure, Xavier Worthy and McCall Hardman. The main contributions from the wide receivers was on the ground.
They completed passes to 8 different receivers. I mean, this is what good teams do. The really well-coached teams understand a few things, right? One is the versatility it takes to win in a myriad of ways. But in order to do that, you need fresh legs. And you can literally see on the stat sheet how much that coaching staff understands this. You can see it on the stat sheet because there's not another NFL team that's handed the ball off to 7 different guys. It doesn't. Find one. You go look at every game this Sunday. I guarantee you they're the only one that handed the ball off to 7 different dudes.
Sure.
Without an injury to any of them. You know what I mean? Again, you're just spreading the love like all over the place. It's because you don't have like a premier playmaker anywhere, really. I think Worthy is a playmaker. Rashee Rice is a playmaker. I think they're going to be fine. Going forward,
Rice,
I think they've actually
next
year, like they've got a great young receiving core. Really, if when you look at Sky Morris playing better and better, like those 3 really could take you into the next kind of Chiefs era, especially on the small contracts they're on, at least for the next couple years. But right now, it's like you said earlier, it is going to be a rock fight kind of season. The good news is you have a Hall of Fame quarterback, and I would say arguably a top 3 defense right now. And is schematically the number 1 defense. I don't think anyone is quite as advanced schematically as Spagnuolo is with that defense. I just don't.
Because they take away what you want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really playing in a way like a basketball style defense. Okay.
Right.
That's your top scorer. You're not beating us with him. We're not letting him score his 20. We're going to hold him to 12. Figure it out some other way.
Like you look at what they did to Jordan Mason in this game, held him under 60 yards. The guy, he's been going off against everyone. The Niners can just pluck a running back off the street that goes for 110 yards. So what did the Chiefs come out? They're like, you know what? We're going to stop the run first. We're going to, just stop that run. And they did. And then you're forced Purdy to pass to, a broken set of, skill players. And guess what? He's not the same Brock Purdy.
A little bit different when you don't have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk out there.
Yeah.
But the Chiefs have to get a wide receiver now, don't they? Because, Juju, it showed okay, hey, the reason you can't count on the guy is he can't stay healthy. It's not his
Yeah.
knee, it's a hamstring, but I mean, he may be out for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
MVS
Well,
is out there. Do you bring MVS back? The Bills just released him.
I don't see why not. I think it's worth the
Or
flyer to sign him.
Byron Pringle. He was a former Chiefs receiver. He played for the Chiefs and played for Nagy in Chicago. He's available. I'm not even talking about trading for anyone. I'm just saying, hey, sign these guys because they may be better than whatever you have, because that was basically a wide receiverless game. Justin Watson had 1 catch for 8 yards. McCall Hardman had 1 good catch for 17. Worthy got a couple. So he's running a few more routes and just missed. Amazingly, Mahomes was able to overthrow Xavier Worthy. That would have been an explosive touchdown. Just missed him by about a yard overthrown.
Hard guy to overthrow.
That was it from the wide receivers.
Yeah. And that's been a thing, right? I mean, this is second and a half kind of season that we've been talking about this, basically, where the Chiefs wide receivers. Now, at least they're not lining up off sides anymore.
Oh no, they got rid of Kadarius Toney. Yeah, so they're not subtracting. They're not lining up off sides, and they're not popping the ball up like setting a volleyball to get intercepted.
Right.
Kadarius
But
Toney's go-to.
But at the same time, it's not Tyreek Hill anymore, is it? You know what I mean?
No.
Like there's a big difference here. But like I said, I always look at, head coach, quarterback, and then really ownership. If you have that triumvirate, like I'm voting for you. Like, when I go through on the weekend, money line betting for the NFL, that's what I do. Who's your quarterback? Who's your head coach? Who's the owner? What does that look like in a head-on-head matchup? That's the team that's going to win about 90% of the time.
Well, and the Chiefs should go to another win. They should go to 7-0. They get the Raiders next week. Before we leave the Chiefs, let's hear what Patrick Mahomes said about his big run. Career-long scramble, 33 yards, including 2 pump fakes.
Yeah, it was. I was stopping and was gonna try to just get the first down, and I haven't seen the play, but the dude either overran or kind of got a little bit of a block there, and so once I got on the sideline, it opened up, and I was able to get down there, and I thought about cutting it back, but I'll save that for the playoffs, and then right now I'm going to continue to run out of bounds.
He did go ahead, though, and dropped his shoulder to run in the touchdown, and just knocked back the safety for the Niners, Mustafa, who had a couple of big hits early in the game, and is a pretty good player, but Mahomes just blew through him.
That was pretty eye-opening.
A little bit later, yeah.
I was going to point that out if you didn't. That was pretty eye-opening at the end of that run where he runs over Mustafa. Like that, Mahomes is an athlete, man. Like Mahomes is an athlete.
Built guy. I mean, he's 6'2". He's 6'2", about 235. He's a pretty well put together guy. So
that's power back size.
Steam. He can knock you down. He's bigger than a running back. Yeah, he weighs 20 pounds more than Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, that's power back size. You get into that 230 realm, that's a power back.
And let's wrap it up with Sunday Night Football. It was a game with 2 crestfallen quarterbacks going at each other. Russell Wilson was able to use a phrase that his wife, Sierra, used to get a top song, leveled up the Steelers offense. The Steelers put 37 points on the board against de facto general manager, head coach Aaron Rodgers and the New York Football Jets. Jets. The Jets fall to 2-5, and we got to hear from El Presidente, Aaron Rodgers, after the game.
Oh, boy.
And before you watch this clip, just remember, this is a guy who was in line to be the host of Jeopardy. See if you'd like to see this on TV every day.
It's been a rough stretch since we played so good on Thursday night. We've lost each of those 4 in different ways, but we got to figure it out. Obviously, we added 2 big-time players to the locker room. One's here, one's coming Monday. So, everything's still right in front of us. We got to somehow keep the belief in the locker room and start a run. You can't win 10 in a row unless you win the first one. So we got to be very critical of ourselves, each of us individually, tomorrow, and then come in with the right attitude all week and go to New England and get a win.
Well, they may well get a win against New England. New England's horrible.
Well, they will.
That's it's not what you were expecting, is it?
No, well, maybe what you and I were expecting, but I think that's not what Jets fans were expecting. This is not the same Aaron Rodgers. You know, for his entire career, if the guy throws 2 picks, he loses every single time. This isn't different. He just throws more picks. You know what I mean? Like this Aaron Rodgers he hasn't looked the same since really the second to last year in Green Bay. That is so far now in the rear view. That year where he was part of the MVP conversation is so far in the rear view now. His last year in Green Bay, he looked like he'd lost a step, looked like he'd regressed. I think the Jets, like you said, crestfallen. They were wishing on a star here in the first place. I think they depended way too much on him. And it's obvious look at his attitude. He is not. I mean, I spent a lot of time criticizing, Rodgers, and in part because I'm a lifelong Lions fan. But and the other part is I'm not wrong. He's not a great guy in the locker room historically. His teammates don't historically find him super loving. They normally find him pretty prickly. Only a select few end up in the inner circle, and then those guys are the ones that he basically brought to the Jets, the inner circle guys. Leadership with inner circles is not good leadership. I'll just say that.
No, and I think he actually believed. I mean, I really do in a crazy way. I think he really believed that they were in position to have a great year and go to the Super Bowl because he just seems utterly dejected.
Mm-hmm. I think it's tough because we talked about this before too. Like he's a guy that's always been so mega talented, and this happens with athletes. We see it a lot, that they're able to get by on that talent. I'm not saying he doesn't work. He doesn't work out. He doesn't practice. He does. He doesn't work out and practice as hard as some of the other guys, though. And I think that's pretty well known at this point. And I think it shows at the end of the day, because before he could just out athlete those other guys, he could still look better because he was a better athlete. Well, Father Time is a pretty hard, opponent. You're normally not going to beat him. And Father Time has caught up with Aaron Rodgers, and he has refused. I mean, like we saw Michael Jordan late in his career become an amazing jump shooter. Aaron Rodgers is not going to become a more accurate passer because he doesn't have the work ethic that Michael Jordan did. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, look how hard clearly Russell Wilson has worked. Clearly, I would say what you want about Russell Wilson, but clearly since that first season in Denver, he has really worked his butt off to get to where he is now. That is obvious. And really hats off in a way to Wilson. I did not think that he could play like that. I did not think that he could take that Steelers offense to new heights. But here's the problem is that like Aaron hates interceptions. He always has. And like I said, if he throws 2, they lose every single time. And in the second half, when they had a close game, there was in the third quarter, he was on a drive, got all the way down into the red zone, and he throws a pick in the red zone. I knew. I looked at my son, and I said, it's over. It's over. They're not coming back from that. And they didn't, because the Aaron that you get after he throws an interception is a pouty, like, I want to take the ball and go home guy. And again, not a leader.
Yeah, and Russell Wilson's best debut by a Steelers quarterback since the 1950s, 264 yards, and they got over 100 yards on the ground. So it was the perfect Mike Tomlin offensive blueprint. Well, with that, we'll wrap up the sports wrap, kind of giving you a little bit of a tying the bow on the NFL and college football over the weekend. You can stay tuned to FiredUP Network right here on sports.tv on True TV Plus. Download that True TV Plus so you can take it with you anywhere. And then we'll be back later on this week to break down college football and the NFL as we head into another week of the football season. Alex, thanks for checking in here on Sports Wrap. And people can get in touch with you on Action, on Insta. Where at?
At FiredUp Alex on X, at FiredUp Alex on Insta, Campus Bets on YouTube. A little bit of a rougher week last weekend. I don't want to talk about it.
Now, definitely round robin those picks. It helps you out some. And then I'll be back with Timeout Kansas City. We're going to take a look at the Kansas City Currents big week. Temwa Chawinga the only player in NWSL history to score a goal against every other team in the league in the same year. She kicked in goal number 20 and now has a couple games left and has already scored more goals than 3 teams in the league herself. So big week for the Current. The Current's rising in the NWSL. And we'll take a look at Sporting, whose season is mercifully over. The highlight of the season was making it to that U.S. Open Cup final. We'll take a look at what they're going to do going into the next year on Timeout Kansas City. And then we'll see you back here on the weekend. Thanks for joining us on the Fired Up Network. And we'll see you back here later in the week.
Adios.
Bye.